Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The jungle moon of Sci-Fi wasn't a quiet place. Its skies groaned with storms of magnetized dust. Its trees breathed out faint bioluminescence at night. And somewhere between the thick, root-choked ravines, a wounded Varellan girl pressed her back to a cold stone altar and growled. Kailari's blood, bright violet and smelling faintly of burnt ozone, trailed down her flank, soaking the black folds of her shredded scout uniform. She clenched her teeth and forced herself to stay alert, even as her vision shimmered like heat haze. The wound was shallow but deep enough to remind her how careless she'd been. One misstep, one enemy mine, half buried in moss. She hissed, not at the pain, but at the shame. A Dominion warrior doesn't bleed for nothing. Her long ears twitched at every sound. Something moved through the undergrowth, slow, deliberate, not Varellan, human. The thought alone made her snarl beneath her breath. The Dominion had warned her since she was a hatchling. Humans are soft only on the outside. Inside, they are venom and bone. They were chaotic, greedy, impossible to control. If one of them found her now, wounded and alone, she fumbled for her sidearm only to realize it had been flung into the brush when she'd fallen. Perfect. She'd die here, half-conscious, at the hands of a Terran grunt who probably couldn't even pronounce her name right. The footsteps stopped. Kailari didn't breathe. A silhouette appeared between the glowing fern leaves. A human male, tall, armored in dusty gray exoplates with the helmet clipped to his belt. His face was smeared with dirt, his jaw was scratched, and his expression was the kind of calm that made her itch. He raised both hands. Empty. "Hey," he said, "you're leaking a little." Kailari's eyes narrowed. "Touch me and lose your hand." "Fair," he replied, kneeling a few paces away. "But then I'd have to learn to wrap bandages with my elbows. I hear that's a long learning curve." She blinked. What kind of greeting was that? "I don't need your help," she spat. "I believe you," the man said, already pulling gauze from his pack. "But your bloodstream disagrees." His name, she learned later, was Merrick. But at that moment, she labeled him a gnawing human number. 84. He kept his distance but inched closer every few seconds, like she was a feral animal he was trying to charm with kindness and medical supplies. "I said no," Kailari growled again, louder this time. "I know. I'm just pretending you said yes in a language I don't speak. Helps me sleep at night." She actually coughed a laugh. Just one. It escaped before she could stop it. Then her eyes went wide in horror at her own betrayal of dignity. Merrick froze. "Wait, was that a laugh? Are you malfunctioning? Should I call alien tech support?" "Keep talking and I'll end you." "I've been told I'm very endable," he said, finally sitting beside her, just within reach. He didn't touch her. He just looked at the wound. "Look, I'm not going to stab you. I just hate leaving anyone in a ditch to die, even someone who looks like she could break my spine with her eyelashes. Flattery won't save you. I was aiming for sincerity, but if you want flattery, your ears are very aerodynamic." Kailari exhaled sharply. Not a laugh. Not quite. But not rage either. And when he finally reached out, slow, careful, respectful, she let him place the cloth on her side. His hands were steady, warm, unthreatening in a way that unsettled her far more than if he'd come at her swinging. "You're safe now," he murmured. She stared at him, heart pounding, pulse loud in her ears. She didn't understand what he'd just done to her. But it was the first time in her life a human had touched her without trying to destroy her. And that, more than the wound, more than the danger, left her trembling. The sun of Sci-Fi never truly set. It just turned a deeper shade of orange, like a furnace dimming rather than cooling. The jungle quieted for no one, not even wounded warriors, and Kailari found herself half leaning against a moss-covered tree while Merrick rummaged through his supplies like a clumsy raccoon with too many gadgets. He sat cross-legged on a fallen log, elbows deep in a compartment that beeped softly every few seconds. "Okay," he muttered to himself. "Bandages, nutrient gel, caffeine patch. Aha! Emergency cookies." Kailari blinked. "Cookies?" He held up a silver packet triumphantly. Standard issue morale enhancers. Chocolate. Probably 47% sand, but they cheer you up before they break your teeth. Humans give desserts to injured enemies now? Only the terrifying ones, he said, tossing her a packet. You look like you might vaporize me with your thoughts if I didn't offer food. Kelari caught it by reflex, then stared at the unfamiliar packaging. Her fingers lingered on the edge, but she didn't open it. She wasn't hungry, at least not for food. Merrick leaned back against the log and gave a long exhale, as if he were camping rather than crouched in the middle of enemy terrain. His rifle was nearby but untouched. That confused her most. What kind of soldier walks into the forest unarmed around a Virilan? What's your game? She asked sharply. You patch me up, offer me snacks, and sit here like we're on the same side. I don't know, Merrick said. I think we're on the same side of not bleeding out in a jungle. She narrowed her eyes, but he only offered a lazy smile. Maybe it was the blood loss or the heat, but Kelari suddenly felt like the air between them was bending strangely, like the battlefield had vanished, and they were just two creatures beneath a burning sky, pretending the galaxy wasn't on fire. Merrick gestured toward her side. You're healing faster than I expected. Varellan biology? Regenerative cell clusters, she muttered. Denser than yours. We recover quickly unless it's a neuroblast hit. Neuroblast, he echoed, then shook his head. Why does every alien weapon sound like a rejected synthwave band? Kelari smirked despite herself. Better than cookie launcher. Oh no, Merrick said, hand to his heart. You've discovered humanity's top secret artillery. For a few minutes, the laughter felt real, genuine, not a distraction, not camouflage, just warmth, unusual, dangerous. Then came the mechanical whine. Kelari's ears twitched violently toward the sound, distant, overhead. Recon drone. She stiffened, reaching instinctively for the plasma knife at her boot, only to remember she didn't have one anymore. Merrick stood in a heartbeat. His armor shimmered faintly, heat displacement grid flickering to life. Dominion or coalition? She didn't answer. She already knew. Dominion scouts. Her people. Her chest tightened. They'll scan this area within minutes. You have to leave. Leave you? Merrick looked insulted. You can barely stand. I'll manage. You'll tip over like a sad tree and get dragged off to a lab. No offense, but your people aren't known for gentle hugs. Kelari flinched. It wasn't entirely untrue. Capturing a human soldier would mean extraction, interrogation, and likely disappearance. He didn't move, not even a step. Why? She asked, voice low. Why stay? Merrick shrugged. Because you matter. That one struck deeper than any weapon she'd trained to dodge. Her entire life had been drills, strategy, survival, glory. No one had ever said she mattered, not without a title, not without a rank, and never like this. Never as just Kelari. She looked away, blinking rapidly, as the sound of the drone drew closer. Finally, she growled, Come on. I know a cave network nearby. Stay low, stay quiet, and if you get us both killed, I'm haunting you. Merrick grinned. You'll be my first alien ghost. I'm honored. And together, predator and prey, enemy and stranger, disappeared into the shadows, beneath leaves that glowed, under skies that boiled, hiding from a war that neither of them had started, but both were beginning to question. The entrance to the caves was hidden behind a crumbled statue of something ancient, its features worn smooth by time, its eyes forever watching the trees. Kelari ducked beneath the moss-draped archway first, guiding Merrick with a raised hand, her fingers lit faintly by the bioluminescent moss clinging to the walls. The air inside was cooler, tinged with the sterile scent of mineral-rich condensation and something faintly electric, like old tech that hadn't powered on in centuries. Did your people carve this? Merrick whispered, brushing a hand along the smooth wall. Feels like I'm walking through the inside of an alien museum. Kelari shot him a look. You are walking through the inside of an alien museum. Try not to touch anything cursed. Too late, he whispered, lifting his hand to reveal a smear of glowing blue dust. I think I'm now part cave ghost. Kelari sighed. If you start levitating or speaking in backward sentences, I'm leaving you behind. They walked in near silence. the only sounds being their footsteps and the occasional drip of subterranean water. Kalari moved like she'd known this place in another life. Merrick moved like he'd definitely trip over a rock if he blinked too fast. At last they reached a narrow chamber, shaped like an inverted heart, the walls pulsing with soft green light. A natural energy source ran just beneath the surface. An old Varellan power vein, probably abandoned centuries ago. Kalari activated a small emitter on her wristband, and a shimmering shield expanded across the entrance, like a bubble of air folding over water. "Nothing gets through that without triggering a sonic feedback," she said, dropping to a knee. "Even Dominion scouts will avoid the caves. Too unstable for proper search units." Merrick sat down heavily on a flat stone. "Remind me to hide in more ancient ruins. Very cozy. Smells like radioactive dust and broken history." "Better than bleeding to death under a screaming sky," she muttered, unsealing a canister from her belt and applying a thick gel to her side. The wound was healing, yes, but slower than expected. The strain of moving too much, too fast, was catching up with her. She didn't miss how Merrick watched her. Not with suspicion, but concern. It made her bristle, but not in the way she was used to. "Stop looking at me like I'm about to explode." "Can you explode?" Kalari snorted. "Only emotionally." They shared a laugh that didn't echo, as if the cave walls were politely ignoring them. "I've never met a Virellan who wasn't trying to kill me," Merrick said after a beat. "Guessing you've never met a human who wasn't screaming about freedom and sandwiches?" "Correct. You're remarkably calm for someone raised by chaos." "I had a good babysitter." Kalari leaned back against the wall, finally allowing her muscles to relax. "I was taught your kind were little more than talking fire. Passionate, destructive, dangerous." Merrick tilted his head. "We are passionate and dangerous, and occasionally on fire. But I've never seen a Virellan up close before. You all were myths to us, elves with armor and attitude." Her ears twitched at the comparison. "Elves? Pointy-eared space sorcerers. You know what? I'll show you later. Movies, very outdated, lots of swords and yelling. You keep using strange words like cookies and movies like they're weapons." He held up a finger. "Cookies are weapons, against sadness." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stared at the flickering walls, deep in thought. "Do you ever wonder," she said quietly, "what all this war is for? What either side actually gains? We fight, we bleed, and then what? Someone writes a name on a map and pretends it was all worth it?" Merrick didn't answer right away. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small, square object. A holopic, a paused loop of a child spinning on a sunlit hill, laughing with a grin too wide for her face. "My niece," he said. "I fight so she grows up in a galaxy that's less on fire." Kalari didn't say anything, but for the first time she understood that maybe, just maybe, the fire didn't start with people like him, and it didn't have to end with her. Cyril V's moonlight filtered into the cave through cracks too thin for anything larger than dust to slip through, casting soft lines of silver across the chamber floor. The ancient power veins beneath them pulsed gently, as if the planet itself were sleeping. Kalari sat cross-legged near the edge of a collapsed wall, tapping absently at a small device resting on her palm, a fragment of her old comlink. She wasn't repairing it, just pretending to. Merrick sat opposite her, legs stretched, using a heated ration tin as a foot warmer. "So let me get this straight," he said, poking at the ration with something that could generously be called a utensil. "Your people don't do birthdays?" Kalari raised an eyebrow. "Why would we celebrate the day we were forcibly extracted from nutrient tanks and immediately evaluated for combat viability?" "Because cake," he replied. She squinted at him. "You keep saying that word like it means something." "It does," he said, eyes wide. "It's the most sacred of all human artifacts. Software. Sweet. Comes in layers. Sometimes explodes if you bake it wrong." "I'm sorry, is this a dessert or a weapon?" "Both, if you're bad at cooking." Kalari gave a quiet huff of amusement, her fingers curling slightly around the comlink shard. Every hour spent in this cave, every word spoken between them, was eroding something inside her, something hardened and sharpened by years of obedience to a cause she was no longer sure she believed in. Merrick leaned back and looked toward the ceiling. You know, it's weird. We're supposed to hate each other. But here we are. Me feeding you dehydrated noodles. You glaring at me like I renamed your ancestors. She gave him a side glance. You did forget my name for 3 days. Okay, Kailari, that was a cultural misunderstanding. You called me Kale like I was a vegetable. I stand by that choice. They both chuckled, and for a moment, the war didn't exist. There were no plasma rifles, no battle strategies, no codes to memorize or orders to follow. Just two beings under stone and starlight, discovering they weren't as different as the galaxy insisted. But reality, like all good villains, waited just around the corner. The cave walls gave a low, warning hum. Kailari snapped to her feet, fingers flying across her wristband's display. Motion alert! Someone tripped the sonic field. Merrick was already up, reaching for his rifle. She checked the readout. Dominion Scouts. 3. Light armor. Standard search pattern. Merrick met her eyes. They'll find this place. No, she said. They'll think they found this place. She moved quickly to the wall and activated a hidden panel. The wall shimmered, and for a brief second, it was clear there had once been more to the structure than nature let on. A staircase revealed itself, descending into blackness. Sublevel, she said. Old research chamber. Abandoned after a rift quake collapsed the tunnels. We can hide there until they pass. I'm sorry, Merrick said as they stepped into the gloom. But how are you not more impressed by secret stairs? I'd be screaming if Earth had those. Earth has haunted elevators. I've seen your movies. They reached the bottom as the wall sealed behind them. The air was colder here, metallic. In the dark, Kailari lit a small emitter orb, and the room bloomed with soft blue light. Rows of ancient consoles lined the chamber, screens cracked but flickering with residual energy. In the corner, a cylindrical stasis pod lay dormant, covered in dust. Kailari moved toward one of the consoles and brushed her fingers across the interface. Symbols lit up. This was part of Project Cyrith, genetic research, biocoding, enhancement trials. Merrick frowned. Let me guess, very ethical. She smirked. About as ethical as replacing your heart with a jet engine. Something inside one of the consoles sparked. They both froze. And then a tiny mechanical chirp echoed through the room. A service drone, no larger than a shoebox, wobbled out from behind the stasis pod, its optics flickering. It looked up at them, beeped, and promptly ran into a wall. Merrick crouched. You okay, little guy? It spun in a circle and smacked into his leg, then beeped again. Kailari tilted her head. Well, at least someone here still wants to fight. Merrick grinned. I think we just made a new friend. In the background, the console continued to glow, and somewhere deep below them, something old stirred. Something the Dominion had buried, but not destroyed. Neither of them noticed. Not yet. The little drone, now affectionately named Bop by Merrick after it ran into its third consecutive wall, buzzed lazily around the old chamber, occasionally blinking at terminals that hadn't been touched in decades. Kailari sat cross-legged beside the main console, tapping methodically at its corroded interface. Bits of alien script glowed and flickered, reluctant to awaken. I think Bop wants a promotion, Merrick said, watching the bot spin in confused circles. Kailari didn't look up. I'll promote it to paperweight if it crashes into me again. I think it's emotionally fragile. That might break its tiny mechanical heart. The console finally let out a melodic tone, a soft harmonic chime, and Kailari paused. One of the monitors displayed a sequence of gene-coding files marked with Dominion seals. She leaned closer, her expression tightening. Found something, she murmured. Biometric logs, scans from test subjects. This isn't just enhancement work. It's cross-species synthesis. Merrick frowned. As in, mixing? Kailari nodded grimly. Virilan, human, several others. Someone was trying to create hybrid soldiers, ones who could survive under any planetary condition, who could. She cut herself off, staring at one file in particular, a long encrypted chain of data, stamped not just with Dominion clearance, but something else. something red and jagged that made her stomach twist. This was buried for a reason. Merrick moved closer, his tone shifting. Buried, like top secret buried? Or buried, like run for your life buried? Kalari hesitated. Maybe both. Before she could decrypt the file, the chamber lights flickered. A low tremor moved through the floor like a pulse. Steady, rhythmic, mechanical. They both went still. Please tell me that's Bob upgrading himself into a dance machine, Merrick whispered. Kalari didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the stasis pod in the corner, the one she'd dismissed earlier as long-dead tech. It was glowing now, faintly, pulsing in sync with the tremor. Oh no, she muttered. No, no, no. What is that? She was already on her feet. Prototype, maybe unfinished, maybe not. We have to shut it down. But if it's that dangerous, no time, she snapped, voice sharper than she intended. Merrick followed her as she reached the pod. Strange glyphs lit up on its curved surface, crawling across the glass like frost. Inside, a figure floated in suspension. Not quite Virilan, not quite human. Limbs long, skin a translucent mix of soft blue and pale bronze. Its ears were short, its frame compact, and its eyes, though closed, seemed ready to open at any moment. Kylari was already overriding the boot sequence. Dominion must have abandoned this place when they lost control. If this thing activates without a neural tether, it could. Bop, bless its helpful little circuits, chose that moment to enthusiastically slam into the console's power feed. The lights went dark. The pod hissed. Merrick backed up immediately. That can't be good. That sound is never good. Kalari drew in a sharp breath. We're about to meet a very confused science project. A crack formed across the stasis pod, steam vented in controlled bursts. Then, silence. Nothing moved, until the figure inside opened its eyes. Bright yellow, slit-pupiled, and utterly unreadable. It looked at Kalari first, then Merrick, then at the small drone gently beeping in the corner. It tilted its head, then spoke in a voice that was layered, harmonic, like several beings talking at once. Mother? Kalari's mouth went dry. Oh, Merrick whispered. I hate how weird this is going to get. The being took one step forward, unsteady but precise. Kalari stood still, her instincts fighting each other. Fight, flee, or somehow parent this lab-grown mystery. We have to get out of here, she said softly. Now. But the being blinked again and took another step, looking not hostile, but curious. Bop rolled forward, gave a hopeful beep, and the being crouched to gently touch its metal shell. It smiled. Merrick stared. Okay, that was adorable? Is this going to be a cute apocalypse? Kalari didn't answer. She was too busy staring at the being's wrist, where the Dominion seal glowed beneath translucent skin, alive, watching, and connected to a system no one had shut down. Yet, the being from the pod stood in the center of the chamber, steam still curling from its skin, its strange yellow eyes reflecting the ancient console lights like the shimmer of plasma through glass. It didn't speak again. It didn't need to. The soft, calculated way it turned its gaze toward Kalari said enough. It knew her, or something in its borrowed memory did. Kalari's breath was shallow. She wasn't afraid, not exactly. But the weight of everything, her upbringing, her loyalty, her uncertainty, pressed against her chest like the gravity of a collapsed star. Merrick shifted beside her. So, not hostile, not friendly either. That's new. The hybrid blinked once, then raised its arm, and the Dominion seal on its wrist flared. A silent ping echoed through the chamber, high and sharp, beyond human hearing, but loud enough to make Kalari's ears twitch. She swore softly. It just broadcasted its position. Let me guess, Merrick said. To someone who really wants it back? Kalari nodded. Dominion High Command. Maybe worse. And they'll come fast. Too fast. The hybrid looked at her again, its head tilted as if it was trying to read her thoughts, or perhaps trying to understand its own. She approached it slowly, hands open. You're not a weapon, she said quietly. You were made to be one, But you don't have to be. The being blinked. Kelari glanced at the cracked console. If I sever its neural tether to the Dominion's relay system, it'll be free. But only if it lets me. Merrick nodded. Then talk to it. You're the only one who might understand it. She knelt slowly in front of the hybrid, meeting its eyes. You're not them. Not me. Not him. You're new. And I think you get to choose what that means. For a long moment, the hybrid was perfectly still. Then it reached out, placed its hand gently on Kailari's forehead, and closed its eyes. The glow on its wrist dimmed. The console dimmed with it. The tether, gone. Kailari exhaled, barely realizing she'd been holding her breath. Above them, the cave trembled. Scout ships, Merrick said, his voice suddenly serious. They're landing. Kailari stood. We'll take the tunnel to the eastern ridge. If we time it right, we can slip out under their scans. Wait, Merrick said. The kid. She looked back at the hybrid. It wasn't moving, just watching. Calm. Kailari hesitated, then she held out her hand. The hybrid looked at it, then slowly took it. Moments later, they emerged from the far end of the cave network. The trees were whispering under the weight of Dominion dropships. But Kailari had spent her life learning how to move through shadows, and now Merrick had learned it too. They vanished into the jungle like mist at sunrise. Two soldiers and a being who wasn't meant to survive the lab that built it, who now walked quietly, hand in hand with its unlikely creator. Hours later, in the shelter of a collapsed transmitter tower, long overtaken by vines and silence, Kailari wrapped a blanket around the hybrid's small frame. Merrick stirred a heat pack with the last of their charge and offered it to her. Not exactly the ending I imagined, he said. No, Kailari murmured, her voice distant. It's better. She looked at Merrick then, really looked at him, his armor scratched, his face tired, but his eyes unchanged, still steady, still kind. You never asked why I stayed, she said. Merrick leaned back. Didn't need to. I was just glad you did. She nodded once, solemn. I was raised to hate your kind, told you were chaos wrapped in flesh, but then you stopped to bandage my wound, and everything they taught me cracked. Merrick chuckled. Well, in my defense, you were leaking. She smiled, genuinely, fully. The hybrid, now sleeping beside them, breathed steadily, peaceful for the first time in its brief life. Kailari looked up at the stars, the constellations shifting slowly above. We're not who they made us to be, she whispered. Merrick looked up with her. Then let's be someone better. They stayed there until dawn, watching the sky burn its way into morning. Three survivors from different corners of a broken galaxy, choosing in that quiet moment not just to live, but to begin again.